Hello and gather around to ye old-timey winter court.
I did not sign up for this.
100% you did. All right, I'm Wendy Yi.
And I'm Chris Yi.
And we will be reviewing Winter Court by Rio Grande Games.
It's designed by Tom Lehmann, who has done some really great card games. I mean, most famously, Race for the Galaxy and that whole line of games. And so I was intrigued when a two-player only this themed game was coming out. Mostly
It's castle-themed.
Yeah.
And snow.
This game doesn't look like it came out in 2004.
Okay, the theme behind it is that it's freezing outside, so none of the court can go outside, so they have to stay inside and play politics.
I did not sign up for this. Let me show you how it plays, and then we'll give you our thoughts. Here's Winter Court set up on the table. There's a two-player game where they'll sit opposite each other, and in the middle here is a bit of a tug-of-war area. There are these pawns here that these tan ones are worth 1 point each if controlled at the end of the game, but they also have an associated special ability that a player can choose to return this to the middle to activate, whereas the purple ones over here are the nobles, and they're worth far more points but have no special ability. So this is a card-based game where every turn players will either play a card out and then draw a replacement card, draw another card, or they will, instead of playing, draw two cards, keep one, discard the other. So on my turn, I might play this card out here to this area to influence this person to my side, and then draw a replacement card. The other person then is going to be able to go and do something like this, for example. Move to their side, draw a replacement card, their turn is done. Comes back to me, and now I have a few options. I can play to a new area with a different color, or I can try to beat the value shown by my opponent. So if I had a blue 9 or a 10, I could play it here and then return this one to the middle. But since I do not, I can use what are called these boosts. The 1s, 2s, and 3s of each suit have a temporary boost value, so I can play the 6 plus a temporary 2 plus a temporary 1, which brings us up to 9. Which does best my opponent's card, so it gets discarded, but then my boost cards are also removed as well. And so that would be my turn, but I have fewer cards. My opponent could go here, and they can maybe do something like this, and so on and so forth. So players keep doing this until either one player controls all 4 of the purple nobles, or until the deck has been exhausted and gone through. So with this, you have to keep in mind that there are special powers. You can activate any number of your special abilities in addition to taking your normal turn. So I could return this one to the middle here to activate this to draw 2 cards. I can now choose to play, or I could choose to do the pass action, which is draw 2, keep 1, discard the other, so on and so forth. So some of these abilities here allow you to play 2 cards at once, or return the pawn to the middle to draw 2 cards. Add a blue in addition to another card that you normally couldn't play the blue with, or the red. These ones here let you pull cards from the discard pile, play additional cards together like a green and a yellow, or a red and a purple in a space that allows those. This allows you to discard a card that is on it with a neutral pawn. So right now, the opposite player would have to play higher than a green or yellow 4 in order to be able to claim this pawn. If they didn't like that, if they had this card over here, they could discard a pawn, and they would just remove this card. Now they could even win this with a 1, for example. And then the Fool allows you to beat a value of a card with a lower value card. So if I had this over here, I could return this to the middle, beat this 10 with a 6, return it to the middle, and move it over. So it's just about trying to move these pawns one step at a time, control all 4 of these, or when the deck runs out, have the most points on your side, and that's Winter Court.
All right, so initially, I thought this was interesting because the designer, but then it was a very tug-of-war game, and I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about that. Because I do tend to dislike two-player tug-of-war of like, I play something, you undo it. I play something, you undo it. You play something, I undo it. Like, that annoys me.
Yeah, there's a few games that do it right, but generally speaking, it's a mechanism that I'm kind of middle of the road on.
And I'm actively anti.
Sure.
But I realized why I'm okay with it in this.
Okay.
For one, there's like 10 to 15 tug-of-wars that are going on at once, so it's not just I add defense to my base, I remove that defense from my base, right? Mm-hmm. So I think having that variety helps. But the big point is that when I'm taking those, or when I choose to take that special action and move my pawn out of my area of control, I'm making that choice. It's not the other player at the table that's making that choice. They're not undoing for me. Instead, I'm making that active decision to give up the ground that I've gained to gain a power that will hopefully let me gain greater ground in the future.
And there's something to be said. You could win the tug of war because it's only one space in each direction or in the middle, right? So you can win the tug of war by playing a very low card, knowing I'm not going to hold this ground by any means till the end of the game. I'll do it early, and I'll have a special power. I'll draw 2 cards early in the game. This is one of those games. Card advantage is a big deal because that gives you more flexibility. You're more likely to draw into the high cards that you need. And like you said, there's a spread of things. Well, I can't beat you on that spot, but my same red 8 that can't beat your red 9 over here, there's 3 other places for me to play that red.
Right, yes. You have some good options there. I think you have some good choices. I also like the actions. Like, I think that they're useful. Having that extra draw 2 cards doesn't sound like a lot, but when you are really trying to fish that deck to get those higher cards, that can be useful.
There's not a lot of easy ways to net a lot of cards because when you I have complaint time really quick. The game does come with these player aids, 1 per player. Hey, and a good an explanation of the different player powers. I wish that was better. But the way that they break down the turns, and I promise this will circle back, the way that they break down the turn structure, I think it's very poorly done. It says you either play a card or you pass and do nothing. And then you draw back up a card after doing either one of those 2 things. But if you passed, you get to draw 2, keep 1, discard the other. That's not passing and doing nothing. That's having a better... You explain that better. When I put it in the overview, right, either play a card, draw a card, or draw 2, keep 1.
Yeah, that's not that hard to say.
Yeah, the rule book in general is a little bit more vague and confusing than it need be. And that's just like a small example of how, I'm like, oh, you should have touched this up a little bit better.
There's definitely some powers that were not worded well, so we had to research how to use the powers correctly. And
make sure that we're doing it right because we're like, I'm not sure. It feels wrong in this aspect of the game, but it feels right logically with this aspect of the game. So once we got the confirmations, you can use the special ability to play a blue card into an area that you otherwise couldn't play blue. That's big. That's important. It makes that power feel juicy.
It makes it feel more important.
Yeah. And circling back to the earlier point before I got distracted.
Which I already forgot what my point was.
The point I was trying to make was that ability to draw 2 extra cards is big because even if you're doing the pass turn, you're not netting 2 cards. You're looking at 2, keeping 1.
You're taking the better.
Right.
And how many times do you draw a 10 and a 2 and you're like, I'm definitely keeping the 10.
So there's just not a lot of ways to easily draw back up your hand of cards. Especially if you're boosting with those 1, 2, and 3 cards.
Oh, yeah.
Then you feel like, there goes half my hand.
It's definitely one of those moments where early on in the game, if you boost and suddenly you're down to 3 cards and you're like, wait, did I forget to draw? I'm pretty sure I forgot to draw. No, I just wasted that card.
No, yeah,
it's just gone.
Played them out. Yeah.
It's just gone. Yeah. So I think that there's some clever actions. I don't mind the tug of war. However, I just find that this game is lacking, and I think it's lacking for me because the middle-ranged cards are completely useless, and then the low-ranged cards, sure, they have that boost ability, but that boost is so minute. I mean, adding a 1 to anything is almost useless, right? If someone's played a red 10, they've played the red 10. Mm-hmm. I don't have another red 10 to boost with a 1. If it has a dual color, then maybe, but I have to have that boost plus that same color. And if the colors don't match, then you're like, I just have a whole bunch of 1s, 2s, and 3s and not larger cards to combine them with.
I think that, to me, is one of the weird cruxes of this game, is what you're saying here. The lower numbers feel too weak. After we played this, and I'm not trying to make this a comparative review to something like Lost Cities, but we did pull out Lost Cities, which we hadn't played in years, just to kind of say, okay, is it that this
Is it that our tastes have changed?
Yeah.
Or is it just really that this game is not quite doing it for us as we hoped?
And I think that was my takeaway from playing a few other games kind of in this head-to-head numbers of cards in lanes was that I think the spread of cards for me doesn't feel good in this game. It doesn't feel fun because boosting with a 1, unnecessary. Having a 4.
I hate the 4s.
Now, there is something to be said. You can, early in the game, throw a 4 down somewhere just to pull the pawn your direction, knowing that your opponent is going to then beat it, but at least it has gone one step your way. So your opponent could play a 7 and they don't have the pawn. They've just moved it back to middle. But that's not an exciting play for me. That doesn't feel like, ooh, I'm glad I drew this green 4 instead of a green 10. There's no moment where I wouldn't rather have drawn the 9 or the 10. And I think that, for me, is kind of the crux of why some other games like this work, because, I drew this high card value, but I don't want it yet. There's no reason in this game, I don't think, that you don't want to draw the high cards fairly early on.
Right. The cards are worth the values that they're worth, and they're always going to be worth that amount. There's never an ebb and a flow of when there's a priority over low cards versus high cards or mid cards.
Yeah.
I agree.
The one power, the Jester, that lets you best a card by playing lower than it, that's useful, but it's almost too limiting because if you don't draw purple, which is the color needed to get that power, then you cannot, that game, ever use the Jester power, and then you have to play higher, which means you have to try to figure out some other way around. So if you don't draw purple, if you don't draw high cards, you're just not playing this game as much, which I find to be a bit of a deflating experience for me.
I've also found that the more that we've played this, the more that it's turned into tactical keep away. Like, I'm playing this card down just because I don't want you to have this power. I don't want you to have the Jester because I want to work on high stuff and I don't want you to have an easy way of overcoming that.
And if you're able to hold that Jester the whole time, then you've shut down one lane of strategy for me.
Right.
Or tactical play, I should say.
Yeah, so it does get more into that tactic side, which I don't mind. I tend to not love tactical games. I feel like it's pretty straightforward here. It's not like some obscure level of tactics. But yeah, I think the big crux of the game is for me as well, that just the cards, the mid cards don't have a good punch point, because even if you add 3 to a 5, it's still only an 8.
So you're saying the mid cards are mid?
Yeah, they are. And then the low cards just aren't powerful enough to make it feel like, yes, this is worth it. I made this amazing combo. There's never an exciting, I don't want to say never, but like, there's not that many exciting moments in this game where you're like, yes, I did a very clever thing. Now, it mostly just feels like I played the cards that were in my hand, and if my power worked with it, cool.
Now, this is sounding very negative, but at the beginning of the review, we said a lot of things positive about it. So, score-wise, it's funny, because where I'm coming down, I don't think this is a bad game. I think that there are those weaknesses that bring it down for me. The fact that the card, the range of usefulness skews too high for me. But there are still clever plays that you can do, kind of like you're talking about, more defensively, proactively, which is not my play style, but I see that it's there. I'm not writing this off as a bad game. So score-wise, I'm coming down on a 6 for this. I think that you can do clever things with the cards you're dealt, but you're going to have more fun if you draw into the higher cards. That being said, there's clever stuff going on here. That instant win condition is satisfying, and I haven't pulled it off yet, but I've been so close multiple times that I'm still looking at it and going like, I wonder if I could. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I just wish the framework around it was a little bit tighter, a little bit more rewarding. So that's for me a 6 out of 10. Good game, not one I'm coming back to frequently, though.
Well, apparently I greatly love this more than you with a 6.5.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, wild. I feel like this is almost there. That's why it's a 6.5, not a 6 for me, is I like a lot of what's going on. I enjoy the powers. I enjoy the card play. I think there's some cool stuff there. But it just doesn't feel like it's there. It's lacking in a little bit of that fun, those exciting moments, because what we mentioned many times, and I feel like we've beat that dead horse now, with those cards, just the numbering and how those numbers work together. So it's almost there for me, but it's not quite a recommendation.
All right, well, there you go. That's our look at the new Rio Grande game, Winter Court. If you've played this one, tell us what you think about it. One that's not getting a lot of attention, and I could see other people enjoying more than us. So if this intrigued you, go ahead and check that out. Till next time, my name is Chris Yi.
I'm Wendy Yi.
And go ahead and have fun being frozen in the crypt and having to politicize and deal with those around you who are already dead. Inside.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching another video from the Dice Tower. Hey, you want to learn more about us, communicate with us? We have a Facebook group, we have a Discord channel, lots of different ways to get involved with the Dice Tower. You can find that in our Linktree link below. So just click that, it will take you and you can communicate with us on Facebook, join our Facebook groups. There's lots of cool things that you can find and become part of the Dice Tower. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Tom Basil.